Are you looking for high-performance data storage that's easy to use yet secure enough for the Department of Defense? Look no further. Racktop Systems gives business software-defined data storage complete with embedded compliance, security, and data encryption. Don't let cyber threats, regulatory demands, or the complexity and growth of your data overwhelm your business. Racktop's high-performance data management platform gives you the tools you need to address the most demanding data challenges. Think beyond storage. To learn more, visit racktopsystems.com. In order to deliver the maximum degree of privacy, personal data must be protected without action from an individual. In fact, this requirement is defined in the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. What if you could reliably and efficiently build privacy into your information security programs by default? StealthBits Technologies provides solutions that allow data to be collected and used in a manner that achieves GDPR compliance. Privacy by design and by default is not just a GDPR requirement, it's the foundation of StealthBits Technologies. Visit stealthbits.com to learn more today. The greatest threat to businesses today isn't the outsider trying to get in. It's the people you trust, the ones who already have the keys, your employees, your contractors, and privileged users. 60% of online attacks are carried out by insiders. To stop these insider threats, you need to see what users are doing before an incident occurs. ObserveIT combats insider threats by detecting risk activity, investigating in minutes, effectively responding, and stopping data lost. Give it a test drive at observeit.com/Security Weekly. IT Pro TV, binge-worthy learning for IT teams. Why is it binge-worthy? It's learning presented in an engaging and entertaining talk show format that beats voice-over PowerPoint snooze fests. Watch over 3,300 hours of content in their on-demand library on your desktop, on the go, or in the comfort of your own living room. IT Pro TV is IT training you and your team actually want to watch, which means a better return on your learning investment. Get started with IT Pro TV for Teams by visiting itpro.tv/Security Weekly and start a 7-day free trial and get 30% off standard or premium IT Pro TV memberships using the code SECWeekly30. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. Make sure you check out our fine friends at itpro.tv/Security Weekly for all of your IT and security training needs. You can get it ad hoc 3,300 hours of training, and your organization can get a subscription for multiple employees, so make sure you check them out. John, we've got a lot of news articles. I think as RSA approaches, we're getting some of these announcements. Infoblox has announced some enhanced services to their DNS security product line. I'm having a tough time figuring out exactly what they've added on. I know that Infoblox, in the briefings I've taken with them and read about them, has a really cool product offering around DNS. Now they can host it on-premise or in the cloud. I think the one part that I really agreed with, that resonated with me, was DNS is really kind of your first line of defense for defending against malware. I mean, if you can have a good block list and track activity and do some detection capabilities in DNS, you're setting yourself up for success.
And they talk about it being a blind spot, and I absolutely agree that for many organizations today, it is without question a blind spot. We use it all the time for command and control using tools like DNSCAT 2 by Ron Bowes. And the ability to detect it, a lot of organizations, a lot of companies actually approach it incorrectly. They try to write signature-based detection for DNS queries, and that's hard to do because DNS queries are very, very random in length and as far as what's actually going to be resolved, especially whenever you have advertisements and CDNs. But if you can flip around, you can start doing exploded views. Like if you can say for a subdomain, let's say a command and control subdomain is like Nanobot Ninjas. And if all of a sudden there's 36,000 subdomains for Nanobot Ninjas, you know there's something weird there because no organization has 26,000 subdomains. So that could be a good indication for a malware command and control. Also, as you mentioned, Paul, it is kind of the first defense because a lot of malware is going to resolve out what is the age of a domain. If you have a domain like Google that's been around for a long time, and then you have a domain that just stood up last week, you probably want to investigate that one that stood up last week as well, and then reputation services. So I think it's a good thing. I actually like this. It seems like it's practical, on-the-ground improvement to their product, and it looks good.
I've tried to do an open source solution to look at DNS data, and I have a lot more work to do, but I do have Security Onion with Kibana, and I'm trying to look at my DNS data, but there's a lot of customization. There's a lot of like, how do I get the right DNS logs? I'm syslogging from my DNS, but is that giving me enough? So I got to put OSSec agents on there, maybe. I haven't figured it out yet. I've got some cool data that I presented when we did a webcast with Domain Tools, but doing it in open source, you got to roll your sleeves up and dig into that data, I feel like you could just go by Infoblox and they'd probably provide you a lot of that insight for you. So
now, if you're running Bro, it's in the DNS.log.
Mm-hmm.
All the DNS logs are there. It's going to record absolutely everything, which is great. But we're actually running into the exact same problem. And I think we have a solution for Active Countermeasures AI Hunter, where we want to ingest IP fix data and NetFlow, which doesn't necessarily have the DNS data coupled to it. But stay tuned. That might be something that comes into Rita here in the next couple of months.
Yeah,
but
and I think my problem, John, is the collection point. Because I'm collecting at the egress, my internal DNS servers are already collecting the requests from clients, and then that traffic from my internal DNS servers going to my external DNS servers is all that Security Onion is seeing. So I gotta either tap before my DNS servers to get that in Bro, or I gotta put agents on my internal DNS servers so I can see which clients and see the initial request. So I think it's just an architecture thing right now.
Or the other thing you have to do is you have to correlate the connection log with the DNS logs. So if you have a connection going to an external IP address, you can do a lookup of that IP address in the DNS log. We're getting into this is like a security weekly conversation.
It's like a whole,
but this is the whole thing that we always said we wouldn't go down, Paul.
Right.
So I agree. And we'll talk more about DNS. Stay tuned, and there will be more conversations on this.
ThreatQuotient came up in the news, John, as having some product announcements. Again, it's a very markety PR kind of release, but I think
really short release too.
Yeah, and I think ThreatQuotient's doing good stuff. I think they're one of the kind of like more innovative threat intelligence vendors out there that are looking to be ingrained in your security architecture and actually make some intelligent decisions rather than just like give you a bunch of threat intelligence feeds. They're very much integrated into your environment. So it's one of those vendors that I more closely track because I think they're more on the leading edge of what threat intelligence and management of that data should look like.
Now, one of the issues I have with this is, once again, this press release is horrible. It's 3/4 of it is describing what ThreatQuotient is and how awesome they are. And then there's like 2 sentences that say what this actually is. Yep. And it's very hard to understand. But there's a lot of IR platforms that are out there. CyberSponse is one of them. There's also another one, CyberCPR, out of the UK. So there's a lot of platforms that allow you to collaborate mid-incident. But the thing that I find interesting about this one is I don't know how many of those platforms actually integrate threat intelligence feeds to do that correlation. And I just got done with the webcast about how you can do threat intelligence right. And if ThreatQuotient can actually correlate and fuse in the middle of an incident threat intelligence data, like we were just talking about DNS, bad DNS domains or ASNs, that's awesome for an incident because every incident responder is doing that, but they're going out to third-party websites to do it.
Yeah, I actually, our most recent sponsor on this show, John, is actually DF Labs, and I got a product demo. They can do exactly what you described. They can actually build an automation workflow that automatically is taking IP addresses off of your logs, running them against threat intelligence sources, and if it meets certain criteria, you can stop it and take an action. You can actually bring that to an analyst and say, hey, this IP, like, do you want to block it? Because I found it on all these block lists and was on Virus Total and all this other, and you can pick which ones, bring it to an analyst and say, do you want to block it? And if you say yes, it automatically goes out to Palo Alto and creates a block rule and then creates a ticket that it created a block rule. That was the best demo, in-depth demo I've gotten of how automation tools are integrating with threat intelligence and integrating with your internal controls. So,
and I think it's
that's
cool
DF Labs. DF Labs.
Yep, and it's cool whenever we have vendors do that for us, but it's one of those things that I wish more vendors would be trained up on. If you're going to do a demo, you should describe very clearly what your product does. Of course, setting up the problem that you need to solve first.
Yep.
And then very clearly articulating how your product can solve that problem. And it sucks because we've had a lot of vendors that want to advertise on the show, and I've contacted you afterwards, and I'm like, I don't know what they do. I just spent an hour on the phone with them, and I don't know what they do other than innovate. It's almost as bad as this CA Technologies acquires SourceClear article that you have linked.
I don't know what SourceClear I mean, they do something with DevSecOps, which we've talked about not really being a thing. It's a marketing thing more than anything else. But I do think that
it may not be rendering properly, but Paul, the whole article reads like this: it is hoped that SourceClear Technologies will help enterprise clients secure their SaaS-based tools. That's it. That's all I read. It's like,
there's more there. I think CA's made some pretty smart acquisitions. You mentioned Veracode. I mean, you mentioned Veracode during the break. That's a CA acquisition, and I think that they're collecting security companies and trying to integrate them to have a play in the market. And I think this is their additional play into the development, web application development, application security realm. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of it. It's no longer a place where companies go to die as the previous reputation that CA.
That's still Cisco. That's still Cisco.
I think it's still
IBM.
Cisco. I think Cisco's, and
I think
IBM.
they're in here today in the show notes too.
Cisco did something with new cloud delivery. I'm not sure what that was. Also, Tufin, I think my assessment of Tufin, its continual attempt to pivot. Like, we can help you manage your firewalls, but they're trying to pivot into these other areas, and they may be doing that really well. They made an announcement about automation for containers and microservices. I haven't dug into the details of what that looks like, but that's pretty interesting. Acquisitions, Palo Alto has grabbed Secdo. I think you and I both independently took briefings with Secdo. I liked their technology a lot. I like their approach, and I like the team there. But they just got acquired. I haven't looked into the. Do you know what the buyout was? Did they list it?
Didn't. They did list. I thought it was around 100 million.
Okay.
And then they also had the Evident.io.
Yes.
Purchase too. So they've been buying up a lot of vendors that are out there. And that Evident.io, I really like the Evident.io portion of it because it is amazing to me how much business there is that's being created by the fact that the cloud providers out there, from like Amazon to Google and Microsoft, suck so bad at all aspects of security logging and monitoring and alerting that there's just this huge market space. And the concern I have, if I was someone investing a lot of my own personal money into this, is how exactly does a play like Evident.io work out if all of a sudden now Google gets their act together, or Amazon gets their act together, or Microsoft gets their act together, and basically looks at everything that your product is doing, and they say, "Yep, we now offer that for free in our offering." That's something
always
that would scare me a lot if I had millions of dollars into it.
Yep, absolutely. So it's interesting what Palo Alto is going to do with some of their even more recent acquisitions. It remains to be seen. It's one of my frustrations is I track a company. I'm tracking the larger company like Palo Alto. I'm tracking the smaller company, and now there's an acquisition that takes place. There's a lot of time that passes before, like, what happens to that? Are they operating independently, like Veracode is with CA, or are they rolled into the product line? And what problems are they solving now inside of that product line? It takes a lot of time for that to come to fruition. And often I find that the marketing around that to their existing customer base is still lacking. In other words, people still think, oh, Palo Alto is a firewall company. They're a lot more than that now. I mean, they've made some awesome acquisitions. It's just trying to figure out how those now further help people solve problems can be difficult. In other news, Symantec may violate their Linux GPL in their Norton Core router product, which is always a no-no for a large company. They will get called out on that. And there was a Matthew Garrett that discovered some open source code that was not disclosed by Symantec. Yeah,
and this is, I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like in the Linux community, it's great that more people are actually using your operating system, right? Your open source, your operating system, or your application. But if all of a sudden the Linux community decides to come down like the wrath of God on Symantec, then all of a sudden it causes enterprises all over the place to go back to what we dealt with, the SCO Linux lawsuits against Auto Part Company and then IBM, and it all of a sudden starts getting organizations fearful of running any open source software. So I don't know. I'm kind of ambivalent. I mean, clearly Symantec is in the wrong here, but I think we need to frame it properly. Let's not try to burn Symantec to the ground, and hopefully Symantec does the right thing.
Infocyte is apparently a threat hunting company that has released a new version of their product and gained some headlines this week. They join a long list of threat hunting companies and companies messaging around basically threat hunting.
And it's powered by machine learning, which
is cool. It is. Of course it is.
Yes.
What else? I think that's it. I know we wanted to quickly.
We had some other stories that I just didn't think were all that great.
Office 365 integration from some
Cloud
company.
Directory.
Cloud Directory is actually the company.
Yep.
Wow, interesting.
Yep. Which they at least did a really, really nice write-up on it.
Actually,
I'm analyzing this from the marketing perspective. Good marketing this one. This is good.
Security Boulevard has done a good job, a better job than most, I should say, in writing about some of these new features in security and actually giving us some details. rather than just, like you were describing before, John, the standard press release of, hey, we're this company and we do that. We're the world leader in this technology and this is what we do. And then maybe a couple of sentences about what the announcement is, and then quotes from it's like a standard cookie cutter press
CEO.
release. Yeah. Maybe a quote from a customer, but it's just the same brouhaha. And what we really want to see is what problems are you solving? And if you are enhancing a product or releasing a new product to the market, what additional problems are you solving? State the problem, state your solution. It gets lost in this press release template that's just not working, in my opinion. So
well, and it is the week before RSA. I mean, we're going to get some pretty
bombarded
bad.
with it. Yeah,
it's going to be bombarded.
Jeff Mann,
I do have a what works session if we want to do that before we close out.
Yeah.
Cool. Let me share out my screen.
While John does that, Jeff Mann will be at RSA, meeting with a bunch of vendors, taking briefings, trying to understand what the vendors do, also doing some brand promotion for Security Weekly as well, telling people what we do and how we help security vendors. Doug White will be speaking at RSA, another Security Weekly host. So make sure if you're going to RSA, check out Doug's talk. Doug is always entertaining. If you ever saw the behind the scenes Doug White story time, I'm still giggling to myself about yesterday's Doug White story time.
That's such a good job. All right, so I got my screen up. If we can switch over. So as Paul and I have been talking about for a while, we like to kind of highlight what works and what we're seeing that actually works in organizations whenever we're doing security assessments and we talk to corporations about what products they're actually using. And there's always been this concept of defense in depth in organizations. And I think that we got it wrong because defense in depth basically became just basically a calling cry for trying to purchase a large amount of security product. And that was like, we're going to have AV installed everywhere. And I don't think that we ever visualized it correctly. And I kind of drew this little thing up yesterday in a webcast that we were doing for Security Weekly, BHIS. If you're trying to protect something like an endpoint, you need to have multiple fields of overlapping visibility. So you would have your standard endpoint security solution. You would have your user behavioral analytics. And I was talking about open source products like JP Certs, event log analysis tool. And then NetFlow analysis, Bro, Security Onion, and Rita, your SIM, and of course your endpoint firewall. And the reason why we bring this into what works is we said it many times, Paul, there's not a single product that actually completely protects an asset because any single product can in fact be bypassed. However, if these particular products are aligned in such a way that you have multiple fields of visibility, I may be able to bypass endpoint security, right? But if you have user behavioral analytics, if you have proper endpoint firewalls whenever I pivot off of that system, or you have NetFlow analytics where you're seeing the data that's leaving your environment, all of a sudden you have good security architecture because any one of these components, or actually a couple of these components, could be bypassed or fail, but you have the other ones to actually pick up the slack. So when we're testing organizations that have this type of model in place, and this is just on endpoint, you could do the same thing for your web server. Sure. Do you use a web application firewall? Are you using a SIM? What are you doing to protect that? Whenever you look at your security architecture in this way, it makes organizations infinitely more difficult to break into. And that is what I have for what works for today.
Awesome. John, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening and watching to this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. See everyone next time.